despite its recent resurgence in popularity, it has become stagnant and sterile. Alternative archaeology is a scientific dead end. And that's because it's based on feelings, not facts. And in this video, I will explain why.
What, you thought the fake Professor Dave was the only Professor Dave I was going to pick on? No. Dave Miano is the real Professor Dave. Now, me and him aren't best friends, but he's infinitely more knowledgeable, intelligent, polite than Dave Farina. But he's still wrong. Wrong as wrong can be. This idea that the whole alternate history sphere is somehow stagnated is, well, that's just wishful thinking. It's just a bunch of crap. Which we're going to dismantle in detail and show a little bit of the old hypocrisy, or perhaps even a little dishonesty or ignorance if we're being generous. But anyway, old Davy boy here is RONG wrong. Before I dive into it, though, I just want to point out that Dave Farina has been challenged by me to a debate since the carbon dating video I did last time on this channel. He's just ignored, which is why I made a crappy video the first time around with a clickbaity title, knowing full good and well that he would come after me, hoping that he would, and now that here we are. You've come after me, Dave. You know this channel exists, so I know he'll eventually debate me. I mean, he did pick on Brett Weinstein for not debating him, but you know, maybe I'll have to bring desserts if I want Dave to show up.
Tell him we'll have punch and pie. We're not gonna have punch and pie. More people will come if they think we have punch and pie. Punch and pie.
To be clear, there are many ideas we could classify as fantasy archaeology or make-believe history or the like. We would be referring to claims about the ancient past that are based on wishful thinking, speculation, and imagination, rather than on science or hard evidence.
This is going to be fun. In case you didn't catch that, Dave just tried to set up a perfect defense. If there is evidence, well, it's not the hypothesis he's talking about. He's not attacking that one, and if there's not evidence, well, then it's not really a hypothesis. It's worthy of his derision. So there's no way that you can attack him for what he's saying here. At least that's what he's thinking. As we'll find out, that's far from the truth.
And there are as many ideas that fall into this category as there are stars in the sky. Generally speaking, however, there is one that has captured the imagination of a lot of people. It is the one you and I encounter the most, and it's the one that I want to talk about. This is the idea that there was an advanced civilization that existed during the last ice age, roughly in the period between 20,000 and 12,000 years ago. But that mainstream history is unjustifiably refusing to accept this.
Atlantis. He means Atlantis.
Now, what is meant by advanced and civilization is somewhat fluid, but the general consensus among the believers is that it was a society that was technologically advanced enough that it could build structures, at the very least on the level of the Great Pyramid of Giza, that it left its monuments around the world, and so therefore it had seafaring capability, and the science it had was advanced enough that it knew not only that the Earth is a globe, but what the size of the globe is, and about the Earth's precession.
No, that's a fair enough definition. I think most Atlantis hunters would agree with that to some extent. Myself, I don't think the ancient technology was very high. Good enough for advanced astronomy, mathematics, that they were able to navigate the oceans to a degree and build some big monuments and stuff, but I'm not into the old space lasers thing. So, anyway, props to Davey for having an umbrella that was actually decent.
The reason why this civilization has not been easy to spot, they say, is because it was wiped out in a worldwide cataclysm, most likely a flood, between 12 and 11,000 years ago.
Yeah, a flood would pretty much wipe out the civilization we're talking about, especially after the picking the bones clean of the artifacts left behind. But what Davey's not mentioning here is that this lines up really well with what Plato said with the dating. About 12,000 years ago is like exactly when Plato dated the destruction of Atlantis at. But, I'm sure that's just a coincidence.
This idea comes in two variations. One is that this lost civilization was human, what we might call Atlantis, and the other is that this lost civilization was not human, ancient aliens.
Fair enough, although I would say that ancient aliens and Atlantis aren't mutually exclusive, and a lot of people believe in both. But at any rate, we gave Dave a chance here. He's laid out his position, and now we are going to watch him make a fool of himself.
Now, let me just say that people who are simply interested in this proposal and want to know more about it, or if it could be true, or who leave the possibility open, are not the people I'm focusing on here. I myself have refrained from saying categorically that no such civilization existed. I leave the possibility open. No, I'm talking about the believers, the people out there who are claiming it's true.
You know, I have the same issue with alternate historians and mainstream ones. Like, for example, Plato said that when he wrote of Atlantis that he was speaking the truth. But some guys will say, they believe that Plato wasn't speaking the truth there, and they've got their reasons why that they can read his mind, like with remote viewing or whatever.
It seems to me that the notion of treating Plato's story about a vast island as a straightforward historical account cannot hold. I realize that there were some people in ancient times, especially in Roman times, that said they believed in it, or at least that it was plausible, but it certainly isn't plausible as written. You have to edit it heavily to make it so. And scholarship on Plato has provided substantial evidence for the allegorical nature of the story.
We're going to see a lot of that in this video. Dave takes these kinds of do as I say, not as I do positions. He's kind of notorious for that. I bet his students go batshit crazy.
On the surface, the proposal that a lost advanced civilization existed during the last ice age appears to be something ultimately based on archaeological remains, historical documentation, or scientific evidence. But no, not really. Those things are just dressing. If evidence were the determining factor, the idea would have died 100 years ago, because the evidence, without any manipulation, points directly away from that idea.
The evidence that Dave values highest points away from it, or the evidence that doesn't point away from it, Dave rejects. But let's be very clear here. Dave at least doesn't say, Graham Hancock doesn't have evidence for his position like so many other people have. He's not a jackass in those regards, although he is a jackass, but not in those regards. The thing is, Dave is basically saying that Graham does have archaeological evidence, but he just calls it window dressing. It's not actual evidence. It's the kid version. Graham can sit at the kids' Thanksgiving table with his evidence, but the real evidence goes to the big boy table. But as we will see, Dave is not consistent in his methodology of deciding what is good or bad evidence, and he's certainly not consistent in his application of, the historical method.
The long road of human development, societies, and technologies is well documented. Everything that the Earth has left behind, and I mean everything, indicates that 12,000 or more years ago, humans had not yet reached the stage in their development where globe-spanning complex societies could have been built. Massive stone monuments in the shape of true pyramids could have been constructed, or that humans could have measured the circumference of the Earth.
Now, to begin with, that's false. Göbekli Tepe was settled like 12,000 years ago, and as so many debunkers have pointed out, a pyramid is the easiest way of stacking rocks. We have solid evidence that people were settling far-flung islands in those days, and had been for millennia. And we have evidence of people carefully tracking the heavens, which hypothetically could allow them to measure and understand the shape of the Earth. What we lack is evidence people actually measured it. Or do we? There's a number of maps in the record that came along before 1818 that show Antarctica with ice-free coasts, and they have very good longitude. Now, people like Dave and many others will say, there's aren't Antarctica, and they'll go through all kinds of rigmarole to debunk this. But the fact of the matter is, these maps have been evaluated by one team of professional cartographers, and they determined that they were Antarctica with ice-free coasts. So, Dave and his friends can complain about it all they want, but this is exactly what I mean by not following the proper methodology. You don't get to just pick and choose which experts you like based on the findings that they make. That's not how this works. That's not how science works. That's not how history works.
This is not to say that history is fully known, that all questions have been answered, or that no as yet unknown cultures won't be found. But the archaeological record is full enough and clear enough to show that in that particular time period, 12 to 20,000 years ago, humans were not at the point where they could be making skyscrapers and trading across continents.
You see that little trick he did there? Trading across continents, which is something the Minoans did, is the same as building skyscrapers. This is a very common rhetoric trick You just take something outlandish, like a flat earth, and you take something not so outlandish, like a lost civilization, and you compare the two, and you're like, look at these stupid people that may as well believe in what? It is an extremely pathetically useful rhetorical tool because a huge number of people are stupid, and Dave preaches to the choir. So what do you want?
Usually, theories that are supposed to be based on evidence get revised when more evidence is collected. Compare, for example, a history book about Egypt or Mesopotamia from 150 years ago with one from today. So much has been updated as new evidence has been discovered. And I'm not talking about minor corrections. I'm talking about major changes. When and how the states were formed, how writing began, reasons why kingdoms and empires collapsed at various times, the introduction of new players never known about before. Dates of major events have changed.
Now, this is when Dave's bullshit claims really start. He's trying to claim that there was nothing different between Atlantis books that were written in the 1860s at the beginning of the modern day Atlantis stuff and Graham Hancock's latest book. There's so much different stuff there, it's staggering he could even think to make that claim. I mean, hell, Graham has changed positions on numerous things when new evidence convinces him. Just like Dave, if the evidence he's evaluating isn't compelling, Graham won't be changing his mind. But Graham has changed his mind, and the evidence and ideas are vastly different now than before. Since Dave offered no evidence, I'll offer an example. In Fingerprints of the Gods, Graham posited Earth crust displacement theory, that the Earth's crust slipping over the molten core was the agent of destruction. Now he goes with the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, a comet striking the northern ice sheets in North America and creating huge floods. Now, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis isn't fully embraced. It's debated in the scientific circles hotly, but it is a scientific hypothesis with peer-reviewed papers. Graham has changed his position.
Yes, the idea of the lost advanced civilization I just described to you is the same as it always was. It's amazing when you go back and read someone like Ignatius Donnelly in the 1800s and see how the basic premise is unchanged since his time.
And the idea of evolution being the origin of species on this planet, it's the same as it always was. You'd be surprised how many similarities you find if you read a book from the 1800s that Charles Darwin wrote and one written today. Do you see how stupid this is, man? This is just ridiculous. And the sad thing about this is that he thinks this is like passing as some sort of brilliant argument. This is a lot like when the people that try to attribute white supremacy to the whole Atlantis hunting thing, and they're like, Ignatius Donnelly was a terrible person because look at what he said. And then we'll compare that, we'll just equate that to you, Graham, by proxy, and then by proxy from that, all guys like me end up getting labeled with the same brush. And the fact of the matter is, the crappy positions that Ignatius Donnelly held in those days were not nearly as bad as most of the archaeologists and anthropologists in those days, but they don't want to talk about that. They said sorry, so it doesn't count. This is just kind of BS, is what it is. It's a bullshit, double standard, hypocritical position.
It will get dressed up with new bells and whistles. New papers will be written. New sciencey sounding jargon will be coined. New scientific explanations will be devised. New experiments will be performed. But all of them only serve to support the existing claim, not revise or update it.
Charles Etienne Brazier de Bourbourg believed the Maya conquered India, and they were the direct descendants of Atlantis. Ignatius Donnelly believed the ocean was only a few 100 feet deep, and that the Garden of Eden was Atlantis, and that it was submerged off the Strait of Gibraltar. Graham Hancock used to claim that Antarctica was a good candidate for Atlantis. Now he believes that it's either Africa, South America, or under a continental shelf. As previously mentioned, a comet is now the destructive agent when it was not before. We have the Reichstadt structure, Easter Island, India, Egypt, Bimini, Bermuda, Indonesia, Spain, the Azores, South America, and so many more places that people discuss as being Atlantis today. It's impossible to list them all. The connections between the iconography and the cultures and the technology and all this stuff is still hotly debated, but to call it stagnant, that's ridiculous. I mean, we have new things like the navel holding statues. We have newer things with like the alignment between the Orion-Giza correlation, and so many things like that. I mean, Göbekli Tepe has created a whole new environment of things. The only thing you're saying is the same overarching idea is still there. And yeah, the same overarching idea of evolution still there. It doesn't mean the field is stagnant. It just means that it clings to the same idea. If the idea is right, no reason to reject it. Now, I know according to Miano it's not right, but Miano thinks that we should use Grok to do our research, so you know.
Not only has the narrative remained constant, the picture hasn't even sharpened. New artifacts or ruins from this civilization are almost never discovered and brought into play, and if they are, they're just objects they jacked from some other ancient culture, or geofacts, naturally formed objects, that they claim are man-made. There's no advancement in the lost advanced civilization idea.
You see how sneaky that is? He just debunked all the artifacts ever attributed to older than it should be or anything out of place at all. It's either hijacked from the culture that it actually belonged to, or it's just some natural stuff that people are just looking at and making stuff up. Very, very cute way of not addressing the artifacts of Gunung Padang that there's debate around. And that's the real thing. When you have academics publishing papers and then debating around this stuff, I mean, it's probably a good idea to not just decide, or, well, probably not such a good idea if you're trying to form a rhetorical argument instead of actually leading people to the truth, like a good history teacher does. Jesus Christ.
The arguments themselves have not improved. They just get recycled. The same talking points are repeated endlessly, just reworded or declared with more confidence.
More bullshit. Outright bullshit. Michael Donnellan has claimed to have found stuff off the coast of Spain, and it's pretty damn interesting. I can't wait till he publishes his Atlantica. Jimmy Corsetti has talked a lot about the Reichstadt structure. The work done with the VASCAN project has gone so much further than it was 100 years ago. This is absolutely ridiculous. You know, just 20 years ago, 25, maybe 30 years ago, when I was in my 20s anyway, back in the day before the hills were dusty, the argument against Graham was, show me the culture that could have built something megalithic 10,000, 12,000 years ago, like the Sphinx. You're claiming the Sphinx is that old? And now we have Göbekli Tepe. I mean, the position has changed a lot.
Myths preserve real history. Troy was real, so Atlantis could be real.
They often do. The Moai walking thing on Easter Island. The indigenous people said that the Moai walked to their location, and lo and behold, experimental archaeology has led us to that conclusion. If you go to a cargo cult, you're going to find myths of American soldiers coming there in World War II and bringing some crazy stuff. It's also going to be incorporated with a lot of goofy, magical, wooey bullshit, but there's going to be some legitimate truth there, right?
This structure or piece of art from this era and this part of the world looks kind of like this structure or piece of art from this other era and other part of the world, so they must have both gotten it from a common ancestry.
This is exactly what mainstream archaeology does. The similarities between tools and artistic stylings are used to track connections between cultures from one to the next. Dave is mocking mainstream archaeology here.
This primitive people couldn't have made this thing without someone else's help.
Again, this is something that Dave and his colleagues do. I mean, if we find a piece of smelted iron in 700 BC Gaul, we can assume that it was probably the Romans and not like the Gaul that did it, because the Gauls didn't smelt iron in those days. And this is standard procedure in mainstream archaeology, but he's acting like it's some horrible faux pas when the people with the wrong letters next to their name, or none whatsoever, do it.
If this known civilization made it, then where are the blueprints or records of it being made?
Now he's referring to Baalbek here, and the lack of the records is a big deal. There are no records of the construction of the platform that the Temple of Jupiter is put on, even though the Romans were pretty meticulous with most of their records. So this is anomalous. Dave mocks it and acts derisive towards it, but the lack of written record coupled with the massive-ass stones does create a mystery whether he wants to look for it or not.
If you don't know how they made this, or if you, Mr. Historian, can't make it yourself, then this ancient culture could not have made it.
Well, if you don't know how it was made, you can't definitively claim it for any other culture, can you, right? So there's still a mystery there, right?
Look, this stone cut is too straight. This curve is too precise. I can't fit this piece of paper between these two blocks, so clearly it's beyond their capability.
Yes, there is totally no sign of better construction in the more ancient megaliths and sites around the world than what we see in more recent times.
The only way to make this thing is with a high-tech tool because I know about high-tech tools.
Now, this one is fair-ish, although it's a ubiquitous thing. I mean, engineers tend to see problems through the eyes of engineering. Mathematicians tend to look at the world through math. Archaeologists assume there's no way to discern the past through archaeoastronomy, really. It's people tend to be kind of stuck into their lens is the one that they know, right? And Dave's right on that. However, again, he's attributing that to just us when this is a problem that every single fucking human on the planet deals with, even people that try to not deal with it. It's part of the human condition.
Yes, there are many imprecise cuts and measurements on this object, but if I can find even one that is precise, that means advanced technology was used on this object.
I call bullshit on this one, Dave. Show me where Atlantis hunters have held this position for any amount of time now. And in numbers. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get a comment from some guy whose screen name is like EDLX-7 on an Uncharted X video. And it's going to be one guy with 0 likes.
Artifacts have been appropriated before, so this one probably was too.
It's not artifacts have been appropriated before, therefore this artifact was appropriated. It's artifacts have been appropriated before, therefore the possibility exists for this artifact to have been appropriated. Again, sneaky wording, rhetoric, bullshit to make a false picture of the situation in their battle against disinformation, as they put it. It's just fucking crazy.
These arguments are 50 to 100 years old. Real models evolve. They absorb criticism. They refine themselves and toss the parts that don't work. Fantasy archaeology doesn't do that. It's in a holding pattern. Errors aren't corrected, contradictions aren't resolved, they're ignored and repeated. Instead of plugging the holes in the boat, they just keep bailing out water. That's because fantasy archaeology is not trying to seek the truth, it's trying to preserve a belief.
Another example of total bullshit. Alternate archaeology is so far from where it was 25, 35, 100 years ago when I bought Fingerprints of the Gods back in 1995. We have DNA now. We have so much more archaeoastronomy brought to bear, entirely new sites, so much more information. It's crazy that he would even say such a thing. Now, of course, you can always go, aha, but don't many of you still believe in X? They say, yeah, man, many of us still believe in X, Y, or Z. It's terrible, just like we still have a lot of teachers that, use their power and influence to get in their students' pants. So I guess that's just something that all teachers do, right? Some teachers tell people on the internet to use grok. So I guess that's something that what all teachers do. They just use grok. Is that how this works? And it's like the brain deadishness of this rhetoric. It's amazing to me that videos like this on his part get so much like traction because it's so transparently stupid. It's just like, if somebody's manipulating me with their words, I get pissed. But his followers are like, yeah, Dave, tell me what to think. Fuck.
This is where a lot of people get confused. They say, but these folks do experiments. They do scanning. They take measurements. They test things. Yes, and they ignore the results that don't fit. Because the experiments aren't there to discover truth. They're there to demonstrate commitment to the cause. They show effort, passion, and dedication. But when the outcome contradicts belief, the experiment quietly disappears.
Well, this is exactly what archaeologists do with evidence they don't like. I mean, we've all heard of Clovis first and that kind of crap, but my last video on this channel talks about how Professor Dave brought up this paper about Bayesian modeling and carbon dating of the Giza Plateau in the 4th Dynasty, which, if you're not aware, the carbon dating in Giza is way off in the 4th Dynasty. It's a couple hundred years off from the written records. So he gives a paper that's basically just math, that they've doctored it. They've basically used the formula and they changed the variables to eliminate outliers to make sure that it fit. There was no way they were not going to get what they wanted going into it. It was bullshit science massaging away problems in the data that they didn't want to see. Exactly the thing that Dave is accusing us of doing. I wonder if he knows that he's like describing archaeologists. Guess what? I made sure he knows.
No postmortem, no reassessment, no change of position. Because at that point, the experiment has already served its purpose. Truth was never the finish line. This is why hard data doesn't end the argument. They just dismiss it and keep repeating the same talking points.
Again, more of the same. Hard data didn't end the debate around the age of the Great Pyramid and those other Fourth Dynasty structures. Instead, they just played with the data until it went away and they could just keep believing whatever the hell they wanted to. The hypocrisy that Dave brings to bear in these arguments is palpable.
Fantasy archaeology loves the appearance of skepticism. It talks constantly about questioning everything, about thinking for oneself. But the skepticism is employed only when convenient. It isn't an actual principle. On the one hand, they'll say something like, they expect us to believe these primitives made this with copper chisels? Ha! But on the other hand, they'll say something like, this pyramid was actually a power plant, with a straight face. To them, the weathering patterns on the enclosure around the Great Sphinx might matter. But those same weathering patterns on dynastic Egyptian buildings do not.
Notice at first he conflates two very different positions and attributes them to the same hypothetical they. Believing that copper tools wouldn't be sufficient to cut enough blocks to build a pyramid is not the same as claiming the pyramid is a power plant. Not even close. This is like me attributing good data and them looting artifacts to those archaeologists. It is extremely dishonest. Because if I do so, the two acts, data collection and artifact looting, become intertwined. And then he repeats this. The weathering pattern argument, it sounds fair. If you focus on the weathering pattern on the Sphinx enclosure, then it does only make sense to look at the other weathering patterns. But he offers nothing because there is no other enclosure, no other pit in ancient Egypt that is comparable to the Sphinx enclosure. And he also omits data that doesn't agree with his position. There are enclosures on their way to the Sphinx enclosure that stop runoff that do actually help us date the Sphinx. I'll put a thing there where I've talked about this in the past. Dave didn't want to mention that because it's that data he was talking about that you don't really want to deal with. Yeah, it's the stuff they ignore.
They cannot believe that the same civilization who placed the large stones at the foundation of a building placed the smaller ones on top of them. But they will readily believe that irregular masonry on one side of the planet is connected to irregular masonry on the other side of the planet, even if the styles are different, they come from different eras, and there are zero other similarities between the two cultures.
This attitude perfectly demonstrates the issue. Thor Heyerdahl made this type of observation. From Bolivia and Peru to Easter Island, he believed the masonry was connected. Academics mocked him. The distance so far and the similarities are just carved rocks, right? Turns out DNA proved there was contact between Easter Island and Bolivia. The skepticism held by people like Davy Boy here kept us from accepting something for about 50 years. And yeah, if you believe that this platform and this platform are both built by the same technology and the same skill set, you're late for your job as a squeegee boy at the stroke booth.
It's a failing of archaeologists if they cannot locate a tool they say was used or reproduce an artifact using ancient methods. But it is no failing of theirs if they can't do those things themselves.
Now, archaeologists will often make an assumption, such as the graves of the workers in ancient Egypt being attributed to the Great Pyramid construction with no written records proving this, or the Diary of Merer, an Egyptian papyri that discusses workers shipping limestone blocks. This is asserted to be for the pyramid, but again, nothing says this. It's an assumption, but it's an assumption they use to knock other ideas off the playing field. I mean, if an Atlantis hunter says they're looking for an artifact that they can't find, the assumption is it never existed. But if Dave's looking for, some writing that he can't find, they just pretend that that writing is there when it's not. The implication is enough. You should just accept it anyway. This is pseudoscience, by the way. That is exactly what pseudoscience is. It's pretending something is definitive when it is not. Pretending something is scientifically proven when it's not. That's fucking pseudoscience, man.
Fantasy archaeology is skeptical only about what it wants to be skeptical about. To them, experts can't be trusted except if they agree with the belief. Then their expertise matters. Carbon dating is unreliable, but if it coincides with the belief, then it is strong evidence.
Holy crap, the hypocrisy riseth. Experts like Robert Schoch or Alan West or Mark Young get derided because you don't agree with their conclusions. Oh, you call them not real scientists even though they are. Their work is ignored or attacked in ways that are underhanded and rely on the ignorance of the masses in order to be sold. I mean, I mentioned the maps earlier and the professional cartographers who evaluated them. These men are universally dismissed by the skeptics. They have the right credentials, but the wrong think. And then Davey mentions carbon dating. As I have pointed out already, these guys will fiddle with the numbers until they match their ideas, even when the party that funded the radiocarbon dating expedition expected older dates. The mainstream erased that data. And so here we have him accusing us of the shit that he does. I mean, it's really, really telling that he's not saying exactly specifics. And I have to say, oh, he means Atlantis. He means the Vases. He means Baalbek. Because he's trying to keep it rhetorical instead of evidentiary.
Make-believe archaeology isn't something people have reasoned themselves into. It's a conscious choice. It's an identity. They joined a team. And you can hear it immediately in their language, the us versus them mentality.
What number am I thinking of, Dave? Since you can read my mind, you know my motivations, I assume you can tell what number I'm thinking, right? Okay, this is ridiculous. This is exactly what I was talking about. This is open, total hypocrisy, complete and total bullshit, and it's a way for him to treat us without respect. The fact that this is all like in the same little clip, the same few sentences, he flip-flops it that hard it's really telling. It's like nobody said academics were self-aware.
Now, I can't speak for all academics.
But you can speak for all Atlantis hunters.
But generally, you don't hear them saying it's our team versus their team. They don't think that way, because academia is highly individualistic. A scholar's job is to come up with something new. They're trained to concentrate on the evidence and not merely on who is saying what. I'm sure there are exceptions.
Yes, you do, as this video is demonstrating. I mean, seriously, the lack of self-awareness here is too much for me. The Comet Research Group is mercilessly attacked by such a large group of people, like archaeologists, who know nothing of comet impact. But they weighed in on the paper, claiming to comprehensively debunk the comet impact hypothesis. The argument, creationists say this as well, is used by people like Mark Boslow to debunk that comet impact hypothesis, as though that means anything. A non sequitur used to dismiss evidence being employed by a PhD-wielding scientist in a scientific debate is embarrassing. And the manner in which Milo Rossi, a popular YouTube debunker with a degree in archaeology, is allowed to run amok by most archaeologists and historians is telling. Twice, other archaeologists have debunked Milo's videos. Both times, the larger platforms and more prominent debunkers in the community had praised Milo's work and ignored these glaring errors that actual field archaeologists caught quickly. Just like Flint Dibble's lies on the Joe Rogan Experience debate with Graham Hancock were ignored by his colleagues, and it's up to my dumbass to root them out. The fact of the matter is, if you're on the right team, to those guys, they will let you completely run amok. So this accusation of partisan behavior is absolutely hilarious. I have yet to see David Miano correct one person on his own side.
But believers in fantasy archaeology, as a rule, are constantly portraying themselves as in a battle with academics. You might call it ADS, Archaeologist Derangement Syndrome. To them, if you've accepted the mainstream version of history, it isn't because you evaluated the evidence. It's because you've been programmed by your teachers. If you reject Atlantis, it's not because the claims haven't held up to scrutiny. It's because you're afraid to think for yourself. Once that framing is in place, evidence becomes irrelevant. The debate is no longer about what's true. It's about who you are.
No, it's more about who you are with the mainstream. I mean, take Susan Weiss, for example. She's an archaeologist who doesn't like NAGPRA, the Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act, because it cockblocks her from getting work done. Now, I'm pro-NAGPRA, but I can see why she has a problem with it. And she gets othered and just completely ejected by her colleagues because, this is too spicy for them. Some of them are calling her racist and stuff even. I recently made a joke on Twitter about how if Sir Isaac Newton had been online and been alive today, that people would reject his work on gravity and his work on calculus because this is the work of a madman. This is a religious fundamentalist and an alchemist. And the reality of it is that people that are crazy in one area can still have a good idea in another. I mean, even Dave here, maybe Davey is good at construction. Maybe not.
And once a belief becomes someone's identity, it becomes dogma. Fact-checking is viewed as a potential betrayal of the cause.
Which is why it was left to me and Sam Urban to do the fact-checking on Flint Dibble, because you guys didn't do it yourself. For all the claims of science fixing itself and advancing, you guys as individuals are very afraid. I get it. It's your friends, it's your colleague, but you guys are afraid to kick rocks at one another, and we end up with this hegemony of ideas, and then you kick rocks at us with this hegemony that you guys built out of friendship instead of out of actual data a lot of the time. It's kind of... I see a lot of hypocrisy in this here video that you threw at me, Doc.
So I guess we can ask, what is the engine actually driving this, if not actual scientific interest? Distrust? Distrust of institutions, distrust of expertise, distrust of perceived authority figures. Fantasy archaeology gives shape to a feeling that people already have, that they're being lied to, and that systems don't work for them, that someone somewhere is pulling strings.
Once again, we have Dave reading minds over here. It's like, this is academic elitism at its finest. Millions of people see something and ask questions about it, but there's nothing to see there because, a handful of people see it otherwise, and you guys, you'll figure it out one day. I mean, this is like that kind of benevolent condescension that Archie Bunker made famous.
It's a real honor to have you in our home.
Thank you.
Breaking bread with us this way. I was just saying to my family before you come in, I said, Sammy Davis Jr. is maybe the greatest credit to his race.
Well, thank you very much. I'm sure you've done good for yours, too.
I tried.
The lost advanced civilization is not so much a belief, but a symbol for them. Science comes into it, but not as the thing that led them here. Rather, simply as the basketball court where it all plays out.
And he just goes on and on and on about this. It's escapism. It's not scientific. It's just like, dude, even his metaphors are bad. This is fucking tiresome.
It's like discovering a secret level in a video game. It makes the past feel alive and full of untapped potential, countering the dullness of the classroom and everyday life.
Now, can you imagine how boring his classes must be? He just compared finding a secret level in a video game to sitting and being bored. Hey, fuck, man, this is insane. This is just, he's so far detached from, like, regular people, I don't even know what to say. I haven't taken one of his classes, but given that he thinks that it's important to use Grok as a research tool and that he's very, into this hegemony thing, I'm going to go on a limb and say he's not too keen on avant-garde ideas because, well, Grok's not going to give you one of those, is it, buddy? It's a bad place, and that's not very good with the hegemony, and we should probably leave that to the experts, and if you're a student, you're clearly not an expert. It really is a sad state of affairs when these are the people that we put in positions of authority. But what do you do? Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to go hound Professor Dave and say, hey, you've been challenged. The other Professor Dave, Dave Farina, the fake Professor Dave. Let him know he's been challenged to a debate by a long-haired GED wielder who will clean his fucking clock. And, be nice to this Dave, Dave Miano, as nice as you think you should be. Nicer than Dave Farina than you are to him. But anyway, there's links down below to support the channel. I'm going to be in Sedona, Arizona, up on stage giving a presentation with some other people here May 1st through 3rd. It's going to be nice. It's going to be warm out in the hippie country, and you'll get to see me, and we'll smoke some devil's lettuce and drink some beers and make fun of people with ill-fitted suits. And yeah, Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope to see you next time.
Fantasy archaeology is not completely harmless. There are dangers in the sort of thinking that gives rise to it. You might think, so I'm wrong about history. It's not a big deal if I am. But the problem is not just being wrong about history. For one, it discourages critical thinking. People get hooked on forbidden knowledge vibes rather than learning how slow, deliberative, collaborative, evidence-driven archaeology and history actually work. This trains people to reject corrective feedback. It teaches people that contradiction is oppression, that expertise is arrogance. And once that mindset takes root, it doesn't stay confined to history. It spreads. It undermines trust in science in general. We see this happening in real time. It's not a coincidence that people who embrace make-believe history at the same time also tend toward conspiratorial thinking in general. It frequently portrays mainstream archaeologists and historians as arrogant, gatekeeping elites, suppressing truth for ideological or financial reasons. This fosters broader distrust of institutions. If they lie about the past, why trust them on climate, medicine, or elections?
I can't even with this guy, man.